Understand that. If anybody has any kind of like insight into that, I would love to see and read the comments on that. Emails can be sent to ParadoxWalkPodcast at protonmail.com. And I'll take any crazy stories too. So I found this on researchgate.net, and the title of this research paper is Illusionary Shadow Person Causing Paradoxical Gaze Deviations During Temporal Lobe Seizures. I believe the study was from 2008 by a lot of, they're difficult to pronounce last names for me because I believe it's Norwegian or Scandinavian names for the neuroscientists. The date is July of 2009, but I think when you go into the paper, the gist of it is they have a lady that's suffering from seizures, and they have her come in for this study, and they put like the electrodes in, and when they do it at a certain spot, they have a picture on this thing, but at a certain spot, if they put this electrode on her, she claims to see a shadow person, and she not only looks at it during this little fake seizure that they cause, or I don't know if I'd call it a fake seizure, but she says it's a threatening shadow person. I'm bringing this up because there's many, many stories of people that have seizures claiming that a shadow person is seen first. One of the more frightening ones was a lady in Australia, and I looked for this. I don't even want to say how much time I spent trying to find it. Like, it's so hard to find things on the internet these days. Like, I used to be able to just type in some keywords and find stuff, but not anymore. She was with a friend at her friend's house or her own house, I don't know. But they were in some, like, kitchen, and the lady suffering from seizures just kind of looked over into the wall area, and she said it looked like there was a three-dimensional room inside the wall with a man, a shadow man, that was, like, not happy that she was looking at her. And she turns to her friend and she goes, "Do you see that? Do you see that?" And her friend's like, "No, what?" She goes, you see that man right there?" And her friend was like, "No, I don't see it." And then he started approaching the victim, the lady with the seizure issues, and she backs away from it and runs into the living room, and she like went on to some like couch or love seat or something in the living room, and this thing went right inside the house, went right at her, and she said it grabbed her ankle. And immediately, once it touched her, she felt, she called it electrical or like lightning energy going up her. And she went into a grand mal seizure, but she goes, she remembered, she didn't just go into a grand mal seizure, but she started feeling her body shake. And then in her mind, she saw big text letters, the word Adelaide. That's the name of a major city in Australia. Adelaide, Australia. And so the comments people wrote were something along the lines of like what happened there. Like, she says she'd never been there, but she was planning a trip there in the future, and something about that, I was trying to find it for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to read it the right way, and second, I wanted to see any update, like what happened when she went to Adelaide. If anybody can find that story, that'd be great. I'd love to read that again and kind of see an update to that. So these neuroscientists with the seizure victim were able to create a shadow person just by putting like these electrodes to her temporal lobe. Does that mean that the electrical pulses make a hallucination of a shadow person? Or does that mean the electrical stimulation creates a door that opens, allowing her to see a shadow person that's always following her around? Here's another story of a shadow person with seizures. This guy called it a demon. Quote, "My boyfriend texted me about how he was scared. He had frequent painful seizures that caused him to pass out, stop breathing, and convulsing pain in his body. We can get him to a doctor for certain reasons. When I can, I will. He told me all of a sudden he had a seizure and he passed out. He said he saw a shadow with black Air Force," I think she means the shoes, like Air Force Ones. And she says, "No, I'm not joking or trolling. He said this. And he said that he was inside of a dark room. The entity was black and had no face, but he said he could feel it staring at him almost like it had a cloak over it. My boyfriend said he could only feel his head and arms, and it felt like his legs were gone." These are the exact words he texted me. Quote, "I had a dream, a really short one, and I saw a shadow. And the bitch said," that's what he called it, "Your demons see your effort in your fight, but it's not enough, and that's why you're counting to suffer?" Continuing to quote here, "And I tried to talk in the dream, but my mouth was covered by a dark hand. Then the shadow said, your energy is unbalanced and tainted, so you can't become the person you strive for. but you're almost there, and your mind is stronger than yourself. Keep fighting. Bay, that's his girlfriend's name. I'm scared, and don't say I'm mental, because I'm not. The last thing I heard before I woke up was in Italian, I think. He said the demon told him. So I think this Italian is more Latin. The words were anima vestra. He told me what I mentally think of is physically making my body worse, and it's causing my soul to be tainted, and that's why I'm being held back by the past. He said the demon mentioned some other things, such as him having the ability to change the world, and that if he continues to rely on himself and not reach out for others' help, things won't get better. So another shadow person and a seizure victim. That's sad. I wonder if instead of neurological, it's these things, and they create a neurological issue. Anybody wondering what anima vestra means? Vestra in Latin means your, and then anima is like your spirit or your soul. So, vestra is really similar to like nuestra, which means ours. So it's kind of rooted the same way. I wonder how much of Latin a 17-year-old, Western country, English-speaking, knows. I mean, I've studied Spanish my whole life, and I didn't know that Latin phrase, you know what I mean? I highly doubt he is just making this stuff up. To me, that's just cases that I've dug up as evidence of shadow people connected to seizures, but you could never bring this to a legitimate scientist, regardless that it's been how many years now and people are still suffering from seizures all over the world, and how many years has science had to work on this? It's just they can't be saying that the seizures are causing the shadow people because this kid comes out knowing a Latin phrase. You know what I mean? There's some sort of connection when the shadow person like makes contact or something like that. They go into a seizure. At least for some of them. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not some spirit expert. But anyway, I'll go on to the next case here. I found this on Glitch in the Matrix, Reddit. Quote, "Things got weird in my political science class. A phantom sound everyone could hear, but no one could pinpoint the source for. Static energy and an off-putting realization for the origin of the sound." I'm just going to skip ahead here. About 2 weeks ago, I don't know when he posted it, but I was sitting in my last lecture of the semester and we were doing professor evaluation, so it was dead silent, except for this odd clicking background sound and a sort of static noise energy you hear and feel when you're in like a computer lab. At first, I assumed the sound was an animal in the walls or something, and he talks about being at a university building where they had a problem with a raccoon, but that's like in parentheses or something like that. So he thought it was an animal in the walls at first, but I wasn't sitting near a wall. The entire left side of the room is floor-to-ceiling windows. I just assumed the static feeling was me being weird. It's a smaller lecture, about 30 students and 7 rows of seats about 10 desks long, and we all spread evenly throughout the seats. The noise continued when our professor started to lecture, and everyone heard it. Our professor pointed it out and asked what was up. So we broke political discussion and started talking about it. I thought the noise was coming from the front right of the room, and I was sitting in the back left. But the kid behind me said he swore it was coming from right in front of us. I heard it evenly in both ears, which was odd, and when I said that, everyone else agreed. My professor thought it was coming from dead center of the room, and a kid in the center thought it was coming from the back right. Girl in the back right thought it was coming from center left, and this went on and on for minutes, all of us saying we thought it was coming from somewhere else, despite the sound being even. People would occasionally agree, but they were never from the same section. Obviously, the acoustics in the room were meant to reach for lectures, but still weird AF. It continued through regular lecture, but it wasn't until 15 minutes into the lecture that I realized what the noise was. I was typing my notes when the tapping momentarily matched my keystrokes, and I recognized the sound immediately. It was typing. At least 3 or 4 keyboards. Only one other girl and I had our computers that day, and she sits in the seat rear next to me, so I knew it wasn't her. Plus, it persisted when neither of us were typing. And I know what that sound is. I work in a newsroom where there are at least 3 people typing at all times, and it sounded exactly the same. I knew I was right. It was really odd, and I wasn't paying attention to lecture at all at this point, instead focusing on the tapping. Suddenly, there were 3 louder beeps and the sound of a machine or something powering down, it just stopped. You could tell everyone noticed. We all looked around at each other. The professor stopped talking mid-sentence, and the air seemed thinner, less charged, if that makes any sense. Everyone was silent for the rest of the class, which is odd. It's usually a very spirited debate class, and we were talking about protests, something I know everyone felt rather strong about, and you could see the tension on everyone's faces. When we left the lecture hall a while later, I think everyone sensed it wasn't natural, but no one knew what to think. I still don't. I just know whatever we heard didn't come from that room or that building. So that was weird. In a similar fashion, this other person put up like 3 glitches that he experienced. I'm going to read the last 2 because I think I'm running out of time. So this is the second one that he had. I was riding my bicycle down the street one morning. I looked up at the sky and I saw what looked like a faded purplish view of a zeppelin off in the distance. This is like modern day, right? It was very large and added a cute slant to the horizon as if it were crashing. It could not have been an unusual cloud formation, although it was a morning cloud-colored purples and pinks and yellows, because it was far too detailed. It looked exactly like a picture of the famous Hindenburg disaster. I looked around wildly to find someone to corroborate it, but the street was empty. I stood there straddling my bike, staring at it until finally I really had to be on my way. When I looked up again, it was gone. Naturally, I did not have my phone on me. And this is the second one that reminds me of this schoolroom, lecture room thing. Quote, one day I was in my room just chilling. I live in a major urban area, and it is never quiet here. There are trucks and cars, sirens at the nearby hospital, dogs barking, people shouting, everything. Suddenly, I heard all the ambient sounds as one slow down and come to a halt, with that Doppler shift drop in pitch like a huge motor or machine slowing down and stopping. Then I heard that sound in reverse as everything started up again, as if someone had cut the power to reality for a second or cycled the power switch and a hot reboot. Crazy stuff. I don't even know what to think about some of this stuff. Anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for checking out the podcast. The music is by Downbeat 88. The opening track is called The Dark. The final outro track is called Moment of Peace. My Patreon is patreon.com/ParadoxWalk. And I'd like to thank my first Patreon, Roxy. Click the RSS feed and to keep notified of all the uploads of the podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Have a good day. Bye.